one thing I do wanna, because I think you did make a video on like war elephants. If I'm not mistaken, right? Yeah, I
Yeah,
really
yeah.
like that one because um, one thing I don't think a lot of people know is like because there's obviously two types of species of elephants, right? African and Asian,
Mhm.
right? Those are primarily the two. And obviously, people don't know this, but Asian elephants are actually a lot easier to train than your African counterparts, right?
Mhm.
It's even said that Hannibal, right? The one who
Yeah.
crossed the Alps on Italy. It is said that supposedly that his elephant was actually from Asia, believe it or not. Yeah. So it's like crazy to think that an Asian elephant was actually going through like Europe, right?
Yeah, yeah, that's
And like
hilarious.
crossing the Alps.
That I mean, yeah, it is it really wouldn't surprise me because elephants were like currency between kingdoms, honestly. Like
Yeah. Like absolute
if
tanks.
yeah, yeah, and if I recall in I think it was in Chandragupta's time, in Chandragupta Maurya,
Yeah.
he made a deal with Seleucus Nicator to marry his daughter in exchange for like he gave Seleucus Nicator like hundreds of war elephants to use in his
Yeah.
wars in the West. So, I mean, it really was something that had leverage. But over time, war elephants actually ended up being very like hit or miss. I think I talked about it a little bit in the video,
Yeah.
but like in ancient times, it was obviously like just this absolute advantage. And later on, it was still an advantage in certain battles, but it could be turned against you. I think I talked
Yeah.
about this. There was like a member of an invading army in Sindh, and he was like a fantastic archer. He's like a legendary archer. And the story goes that he aimed for the eye of this famed white elephant of the
Okay.
king of Sindh, and it hit the eye of this elephant, and it went into a frenzy. He like sniped it from like half a
Yeah.
mile
That's
away,
pretty impressive
and
considering how hard that must be.
yeah, yeah. I mean, the guy's. I mean, who knows how much of this is legend and how much of it is
Yeah.
real? But so the story goes that it enraged the elephant, and that elephant tore through its own ranks, causing like
Yeah.
havoc on the battlefield. So, I mean, and there's many examples of this in Malacca in Southeast Asia. The Sultan of Malacca had an elephant corps that met the Portuguese on land. And you would think these Portuguese spearmen, Portuguese and Indian spearmen, would basically be screwed, right? But they had been trained in India fighting against Indian armies. So they knew how
Yeah.
to fight war elephants, and they knew how to get into formation, and they knew not to run. And they also knew exactly how to hit them and encircle them and confuse them. So the Sultan goes out on his like royal elephant corps thinking that he's going to smash through these Portuguese regiments. But instead,
Yeah.
these like heavily armored knights with these pikes and stuff, they just like they end up enraging the Sultan's elephant, who throws him off its back, and he gets like severely injured, and he has to be dragged away by his own soldiers. And yeah, I mean, like elephants were, I think, towards the end, like they were still being used even into the 1700s and 1800s. But I think once you get into the late medieval era, you definitely see that they have iffy strategic consistency, and they were used a lot as like a status symbol. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's almost like if you think about it from a morale perspective, like your troops might feel like, oh, look at how powerful we are. We have these elephants on our side and stuff like that. So it might have an advantage from a morale perspective. But like,
Yeah.
yeah. Sorry, I'm
Uh,
going on these like long rants. I don't mean to take your
sure.
questions and like run
No,
with
no,
them
no,
as
it's
much.
fine. No, that's true because one thing I do know is that elephants are not as mobile as, say, like a horse, right? Or even like a
Mhm.
foot soldier. So it can be like a disadvantage at times.
Right. Yeah. I mean, they can't jump. So, like Indian armies used to just dig ditches and like trap elephants.
Yeah.
Um, they're like all sorts of tactics that they have for like avoiding those. Obviously, there's like tactics and counter tactics, and I could go into these things in videos. I think I did slightly in the war elephant video, but for the most part, I find military history interesting in broad strokes,
Yeah.
but I don't tend to be obsessed over tactics. You might notice that like sometimes I'll talk about battles and I'll just talk about the outcome of the battle and maybe like a
Yeah,
couple interesting things that happened in it. But there's channels on YouTube where their entire interest in history is like they want to go into
battle
the
tactics.
like
Yeah,
battle tactics,
yeah,
like which is fine. I mean that stuff's interesting to me, but like I don't know, it's just not the sort of thing that really excites
that
me.
you personally do. Yeah, no, I feel you. What's actually interesting is, um, obviously, like how I said, like Asian elephants tend to be easier than African elephants. There was actually a time, I believe I forgot what it was, but it was a battle in Egypt actually, where for the first time, and I think it was the only time in history where Asian elephants and African elephants actually fought against each other.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, and the surprising thing is that the Asian elephants, I think they're the ones who actually won.
I mean that doesn't make sense if they're
Yeah,
more trainable and
yeah.
easier